Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Hope you're having a good Thursday. We're going to jump into the first part of testimony for today. But first, if you're watching on YouTube, you know the drill. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video, share it with your friends, and you can ring my bell if you want notifications of when I post new content. Music fact of the day. REM is not a fan of their hit song, Shiny Happy People. Lead singer Michael Stipe said it's a fruity pop song written for children. If there was one song that was sent into outer space to represent REM for the rest of time, I would not want it to be Shiny Happy People. We left off yesterday with Detective Kaikumanu on the stand. He is still, I have to say, the first part of the day, really repetitive when Pryor got up on cross, but y'all, the last 10 minutes or so before lunch blew my mind. We're going to get there. Prosecution picks back up today with searches Alex did on his Google account. One day before the attempt on Tammy, October 8th, 2019, Alex did searches about 6.5 Grendel drops. That's how far the bullet will drop after being fired from certain distances. 6.5 Grendel was recovered in the search warrant of the townhomes. The day of the attempt on Tammy, October 9th, AR-15 searches and also a search for frog tog pants. In fact, he bought a black pair that day from Sportsman's Warehouse. The day after the attempt on Tammy, how an AR functions in cold weather, prep AR to shoot in cold weather, and other searches of that nature. The prosecution asks about weather in the area in October. The witness says it gets cold. He researched the temperature the day Tammy was shot at. It was 26 degrees. I also remember locals saying it was unseasonably cold and definitely not a day where people would just be out wandering around at night, especially kids. On October the 11th, how to attach a ghillie suit. That is seen on screen here. If you're looking on YouTube, pretty scary. It's what you put on if you want to look like a big bush, essentially. He also searched if a 6.5 Grendel will shoot through a windshield, and also a 2000H Dodge Dakota body thickness. How thick is 22 gauge steel? By the way, the car Tammy drove the night she was shot at was a 2008 Dodge Dakota. They looked at shooting range records at the Sportsman's Club. He visited the shooting range 5 times between October 7th through the 15th, 2019. Data from Tammy's phone. There was an email sent from Tammy's Gmail to her son, Mark. This was sent on October the 13th, 2019. This was 4 days after the attempt. In the email, Tammy tells her son she arrived home around 9:15. And the last couple of sentences, I looked up thinking it was Dad or Garth to help me carry stuff in. Nope. It was a guy dressed in all black with a ski mask pointing a rifle at me. I think I was a bit in shock because I just said, "What do you think you're doing?" I noticed the rifle was actually a paintball gun. It had a hopper on it. The guy started pulling the trigger and I could hear clicking and whooshing sounds of an empty paintball gun. He stayed standing by the back of the car, pulling the trigger while pointing the gun at me. For some reason, I just kept asking him what he thought he was doing. At that point, I was actually more annoyed than scared because he was standing between me and the door, and he didn't step towards me or say anything. The scared part came after, when my brain thought of things that could have happened. On Thursday night, I didn't go to Zumba because understandably, I didn't want to be out after dark alone. They go back to the photo of the rifle that was found in Alex's townhome. It's an Alexander Arms 6.5 Grendel. Prosecution has the detective show where the hopper would be on a paintball gun in relation to the scope on Alex's gun. I'm going to tell you guys, I looked up paintball guns that look like rifles, and these days you can actually get a magazine hopper so you don't have that big bubble hopper on top. And had someone on Twitter named Joel, who is a veteran of the Marine Corps. Thank you, Joel, for your service, who said he would not be able to tell the difference between a paintball gun and a real rifle in the dark in a split second. So I appreciate that input. Is something I've thought all along. Back to these photos, what the prosecution did was show where the hopper would be, and the detective tells where a suppressor would go on this rifle found at Alex's townhome. At the end of the rifle, it was threaded, and you could screw a silencer on there And a reminder, they did find silencers in that townhouse. Alex was also in the area of the Daybell home the night of the attempt. He was located going up and turning next to the Daybell residence, made a turn, and then went back around the Daybell residence. This was between 4:55 and 5:03 p.m., just 4 hours before the attempted shooting. The same device was at a Sportsman's Warehouse later that day. There were no other calls reporting a masked man or anyone pointing a rifle or paintball gun at any of the neighbors or anywhere in the area, and the incident was isolated. The witness looked at Geofence location from October 18th through the 19th. This is the day before and the day of Tammy's death. The day before Tammy's murder, between 10:07 and 10:45 p.m., there is a device registered to Alex near an LDS church about 2.6 miles from the Daybell home. There is a gap in the data between 10:45 and 11:53, so likely that device was turned off. At 10:53 p.m., when the device registers again, it is 7 miles south of the church on Highway 20. The last person to see Tammy other than Chad was their son, Garth. The night of October 18th, Garth was at work at a haunted Halloween attraction since it was October. It's seasonal work. He got off around 1 a.m. This is after the time the coroner and the medical examiner believed Tammy was killed. There was no data from Chad's phone, which is interesting. Chad said he had been home all night. Prosecution points out Alex is near the Daybell home the night of the attempt and the night of the murder. The only person that Alex knew that lived in that area was Chad Daybell. They bring up the emails from Charles to Tammy and also to Chad, where Charles talks about the affair. They read out a portion that was sent from Charles to Tammy on June 29th, 2019, just shy a couple of weeks before Charles was murdered. He sent an email to her school email. They never could determine if Tammy ever had contact with Charles, but the email to Chad telling him he knew of the affair and that Chad needed to tell Tammy or he would. Charles let Chad know he was also aware that Lori sent dance videos to Chad and said that was inappropriate. They bring up that Lori and Chad are married on November 5th, 2019. The funeral for Tammy was 3 days after her death on cross. I am not going to go through all of this with Pryor because essentially Pryor tries a million ways to just reiterate to this jury, Tammy said specifically this is a paintball gun. The witness, of course, is not giving in, and he does admit that she says it's a paintball gun, but he points out it's dark. Pryor points out that one of the responding officers to the night of the attempt walked up to the computer with Tammy and looked up paintball guns, and Tammy pointed to the one she said the person was holding. Pryor points out the officer did not include that in his first report or the supplemental report. Pryor reads an email Tammy made to her son that says the guy started pulling the trigger and I could hear a clicking and a whooshing sound of an empty paintball gun. Pryor says Tammy put in the email, the person was just pointing the gun at me. He said she used the word gun, but we don't know if that was a mistake or if she just didn't feel like typing out paintball. Then he goes on to read some more of that email. Pryor asked the witness that even with a silencer, it's going to make a loud noise. And the witness says there would be a noise, but definitely not as loud. Pryor says when you're right by the door when this happens, you have Garth and Chad inside. You would think they would hear something. Now, in the middle of a lot of this were objections by the prosecution that were ultimately sustained by Judge Boyce for the most part. Tammy does bring up in the email that it's possible that it could be a teenager who has bipolar disorder, who lives down the street and walks around a lot. There's also another theory about someone who pulled up to a neighbor's house and stole their dog. But then Pryor says it's clear Tammy knew it was a paintball gun. That's objected to. The teenager walking around was just a theory by one of the neighbors, not fact, just something that they were trying to figure out what actually happened. Tammy does say she's leaning towards that theory because the guy did not try to rob or hurt her. Pryor plays this 911 call a couple of times. Pryor says she said he held it like a rifle. She didn't say it was a rifle. There's an objection saying the audio speaks for itself. Boyce sustains that. So Pryor just plays the 911 call again. Pryor shows a photo of a paintball gun with a hopper, and it's really obvious on the top. But again, I looked, and some of those don't look like that. they don't have the bubble hopper. He spends way too long pointing out Tammy mentions the word hopper. The witness says, yeah, in the daylight, it would be easy to see that, but Pryor doesn't like that. He also brings in a Facebook post by Tammy to a neighborhood group and points out that she again mentions a paintball gun. Pryor shows Tammy searching for airsoft guns around 9:30 p.m. the night this happened. She did not search for a rifle. He says there are two people that are best to determine if this was a hopper or not, the shooter and Tammy Daybell. He didn't say this, but I'll say it, both of which now are deceased. They move on to Alex's Google searches, and Pryor points out Alex had been looking at weapons as early as 2017. The witness doesn't know. He just looked at the relevant dates regarding the investigation. Pryor asks if the witness is aware Alex has a history of engaging in the use of guns against other people, and he mentions Brandon Boudreaux. He said it's alleged Alex had a long distance shot at Brandon, and you're aware he murdered Charles. In both instances, Chad has not been criminally charged in those cases. The witness agrees. They try to bring in the tasing incident with Joe Ryan, Lori's third husband and Tylee's biological father, because he asked if Alex engaged in conduct with other people regarding any kind of weapon. The witness actually goes to answer. There's an objection that's sustained. Pryor points out the witness isn't aware if Alex went to the gun range when he lived in Arizona. He does not. Pryor points out October is hunting season for big game in Idaho and pretty much tries to insinuate maybe Alex was buying this stuff and looking up this stuff for hunting. Now, Lord have mercy, y'all. This is where it gets interesting. I've always wondered if Tammy knew about this like dark stuff, and I think we just got our answer. He brings in some of Tammy's emails and chats. The investigator summarizes these chats and emails that leads him to believe that Tammy and their children have knowledge of the belief of light and dark people that Chad talks about and believes. Pryor said, you concluded that Tammy and their children had knowledge in light and dark people. The witness says yes. In one chat, Mark says his camera isn't working, and Tammy informed him that his camera was cursed and his dad was removing it. Mark also asked if anything was found that was notable in him when he was body coded. Don't know what that means. Tammy responds, you had a lot of weapons, negative chords, and curses, plus trapped emotions. We cleared out quite a bit. We'll do that more regularly for you. Pryor points out we would likely indicate Tammy and Chad, and the witness agrees. In another chat, Chad says, Mom and I taught 12-year-old Sunday school yesterday, and he mentions a kid by name. His actions confirm he's a 4.2 dark. Pryor asks the witness if this child is dead. The witness doesn't know who it is. Chad says, I will enjoy watching his growth to world terror and domination. Emma replies, I like that kid though. Tammy and Chad reply, unfortunately, he is already influencing another kid I won't name. The witness again does not know who this kid is. Mark says he likes one of those kids and says darkness is interesting. Chad and Tammy reply, maybe they're influencing you too. They are charming. Pryor again points out the kids named in these messages are not deceased. So, whoa. I don't know where he's going introducing this. We didn't hear this at Lori's trial. We've never heard this actually. We've always wondered if Tammy even had any idea about the light and dark. And from this, it seems by all indications, she did and maybe even believed in it. So we'll see what happens after lunch. I'll bring you this episode later this evening. Tomorrow, I'm traveling up to Idaho Falls for the memorial for JJ and Tylee. So I likely won't get a summary episode out for tomorrow's testimony until Sunday. That'll be once I get to Boise and get into my Airbnb and have good internet. So look for that. I hope to have it out before Monday. If something crazy happens, I may have to make that up at another time. Sometimes the internet isn't super reliable in these Airbnbs. I'm crossing my fingers they are. But that's it for now. Hope you guys have a good rest of your afternoon. We'll see you soon.